My name is Sophia Turner, and if someone had told me my sister's wedding day would completely flip my world upside down, I would have laughed in disbelief. But life has a funny way of surprising you, doesn't it? It all started 3 days before the wedding. I found an elegant cream-colored envelope in my mailbox with my name written in luxurious gold calligraphy. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it, expecting the usual excitement that comes with wedding invitations. Instead, my stomach sank as I read the words. Report to the parking lot staff area upon arrival. That was it. No seat number. No mention of a rehearsal dinner. Just a cold, demeaning instruction. I reread it twice, hoping I'd misunderstood. My sister Lila had always been the golden child. Her life sparkled with perfection, flawless beauty, a high-powered career, and now, Nathan Wells, her tech tycoon fiancé, who ran one of the largest companies in the country. Compared to her, I was the family's disappointment. I worked as a social worker in Seattle, dedicating my life to helping struggling families and children find hope and stability. It wasn't glamorous, but it was fulfilling. Still, my parents never saw it that way. "Why can't you be more like Lila?" my mother, Margaret, would sneer. She'd roll her eyes at my thrift store outfits and scoff at my tiny apartment. "She's marrying Nathan Wells, for heaven's sake. And look at you, what do you even have to show for yourself?" I had long grown used to these remarks. But reading that invitation, I felt a familiar sting. My family's disdain for my choices wasn't new. But this, being relegated to the parking lot staff area at my own sister's wedding, it was a new low. The day of the wedding arrived, and with it came a storm of emotions. I hesitated before leaving my apartment, staring at the mirror as I adjusted my simple, navy blue dress. I didn't want to go. Part of me wished I could just pretend to be sick, but another part whispered, "Go. Show them you're stronger than they think." When I arrived at the grand venue, a sprawling estate with marble columns and fountains, I was directed not to the glittering ballroom or the manicured gardens, but to a small area near the parking lot. Two security guards gave me a once-over before one of them said, "You're Sophia, right? Stand over there." I froze. Stand where? And then, like a blow to the chest, my mother appeared, her eyes scanning me with barely concealed disgust. "Yes, that's where you belong," she snapped. "With the security guards. Don't embarrass us by trying to mingle. You don't deserve to be part of such a grand event." Her words cut through me like a blade. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation for why I was being treated this way, but years of biting my tongue around her held me back. Instead, I took my place by the guards, my cheeks burning with humiliation. As guests began to arrive, dressed in glittering gowns and sharp suits, I felt invisible, like a shadow on the edges of their glamorous lives. But then something unexpected happened. When Nathan, the groom, arrived, I expected him to sweep past me without a second glance. After all, he was marrying Lila, the picture-perfect bride. But instead, he stopped dead in his tracks the moment he saw me standing there. His brows furrowed in confusion. "Sophia," he said, his voice loud enough to draw attention from nearby guests. I nodded, unsure of what to say. Nathan's gaze shifted from me to the security guards and then to my mother, who had just appeared behind him. Her face turned pale as Nathan's expression darkened. "Why is she standing here?" he demanded, his voice laced with anger. My mother stammered, trying to come up with an excuse, but Nathan cut her off. "This is unacceptable. If she's not treated as part of this family, then there is no wedding." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My sister Lila rushed over, her perfect bridal smile faltering. "Nathan, what are you doing?" Without another word, Nathan grabbed my hand. "Sophia, get in the car. We're leaving." I barely had time to process what was happening before I found myself in Nathan's sleek black car, speeding away from the venue. My heart pounded as I stared at him, trying to make sense of his actions. "Why did you do that?" I finally asked. Nathan glanced at me, his jaw tight. "Because no one deserves to be treated the way they treated you." For the first time, I saw something in him I hadn't expected: kindness, protectiveness. But just as I started to feel a glimmer of gratitude, Nathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting to one of disbelief. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated before saying, "There's something you need to know about Lila and your family. Something that will change everything." To me, seeing a child smile when they realized someone truly cared about them was more valuable than designer dresses or grand wedding venues. That's why I had dedicated my life to social work. But when I saw that invitation, the sting was undeniable. It wasn't an oversight. It was a deliberate message. Lila didn't think I belonged among her elite crowd. Still, against my better judgment, I decided to go. She was my sister, after all, and despite the years of tension and the coldness between us, I wanted to support her. The day of the wedding was bright and sunny, the kind of day that felt like it should hold nothing but happiness. But as I parked my old, slightly rusted car among the sea of luxury vehicles, a pang of discomfort settled in my chest. This wasn't my world. I followed the instructions on the invitation and made my way to the staff entrance. A security guard glanced at the card and said gruffly, "Staff areas around the back." I nodded, biting my lip to hide my embarrassment. As I walked through the narrow hallway that led to the kitchen, I was greeted by chaos. Chefs barked orders, waiters darted between tables balancing trays of champagne, and the air was filled with the clatter of dishes. In my handmade navy blue dress, the one I'd spent weeks sewing in the evenings after work, I felt out of place. It wasn't a designer gown, but it was elegant, crafted with care. Still, standing among the polished and poised staff, I felt like I didn't belong anywhere in that grand estate. Finally, I was shown to my spot for the ceremony. It wasn't a seat. Instead, I was directed to a corner behind a pillar at the very back of the room. From there, I could just make out the opulent decorations, towering floral arrangements, glittering chandeliers, and tables set with crystal and gold. Every detail screamed wealth and luxury. Every detail made me feel smaller. As the guests began to take their seats, Lila appeared. She was radiant in her custom-made wedding gown, her makeup flawless, and her hair styled in a perfect updo. She looked every inch the bride from a fairy tale. But when her eyes landed on me, her warm bridal smile froze and twisted into something cold. "Glad you could make it," she said as she passed by, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Try not to embarrass me, okay?" Her words burned, but I forced myself to remain composed. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing how much they hurt. The ceremony began soon after. A string quartet played softly as Lila walked down the aisle, arm in arm with our father. Everyone in the room was captivated by her entrance. Everyone except me. My gaze was drawn to Nathan. He stood at the altar, sharp in his tailored suit, exuding confidence. But when his eyes met mine, something unexpected happened. He froze. It was just for a split second, but his calm expression faltered. His face shifted into something that looked like recognition. My heart raced. Nathan Wells wasn't just Lila's fiancé. He was Nick. 12 years ago, Nick had been the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. Back then, I was a 19-year-old college student, brimming with idealism and dreams of changing the world. Nick, for years older than me, was a passionate coder determined to use technology to make a difference. We'd met at a community event, protesting the demolition of a historic neighborhood to make way for new developments. Nick wasn't just there to lend support. He brainstormed with me, strategized, and stood by me every step of the way. For 6 magical months, we were inseparable. We talked endlessly about our dreams, our future, and even the idea of building something meaningful together. I had never felt so seen, so understood. And then one day he was gone. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. I called. I searched. I waited for weeks that turned into months. But it was like he had vanished into thin air. My mother told me to forget him, to focus on my studies. I tried to move on, burying the heartbreak deep inside. But now here he was, standing at the altar. Nick, the man who had disappeared from my life without a word, was now Nathan Wells, the tech mogul, about to marry my sister. My mind raced with questions. Did he recognize me? Did he remember what we had? And if he did, why hadn't he reached out after all these years? The ceremony continued, but I barely registered the vows being exchanged. My focus remained on Nathan, his every glance, every subtle shift in his expression. I thought I saw traces of guilt flicker across his face, but I couldn't be sure. When the ceremony ended, the guests moved toward the reception hall. I lingered in my corner, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to slip away quietly and leave the past buried. But another part, the part that had waited for answers for over a decade, wanted to confront him. As the crowd thinned, I felt a presence behind me. Turning around, I found myself face to face with Nathan. "Sophia," he said, his voice low and laced with emotion. He remembered. I hesitated before stepping into the reception area, still reeling from seeing Nick, or rather, Nathan. My hands trembled as I adjusted my dress, trying to mask the storm of emotions swirling inside me. The room, just as extravagant as the ceremony, sparkled with luxury. Crystal chandeliers hung like crowns above the space, and silk-draped tables glittered with fine china and silverware. Waiters floated around with trays of champagne flutes. But among all the perfection, I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong here. The occasional glances from other guests didn't help. Their eyes seemed to ask the same question I was asking myself. What are you doing here? Finally, I found my table, or rather, the spot Lila had deemed appropriate for me. Tucked near the back, it was hidden behind an enormous floral arrangement, far from the head table where Lila, Nathan, and the wedding party sat. I froze when I saw the setup. While every other table boasted fine china and polished silverware, mine was set with disposable plastic utensils. Resting beside the plate was a handwritten note. "Don't overstep." The handwriting was unmistakably Lila's. My chest tightened as I read the words. She had gone out of her way to humiliate me. For a moment, I considered walking out. But then I straightened my back. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. As I sat there, my eyes kept drifting toward Nathan. He sat beside Lila, but his focus wasn't on her. He looked distracted, his gaze scanning the room like he was searching for something or someone. And then our eyes met again. The moment stretched endlessly. The room, with its laughter and clinking glasses, faded into the background. All I could see was him. His expression was a mix of recognition, regret, and something else I couldn't quite place. Suddenly, Nathan raised his glass for a toast, but his hand slipped. The wine glass shattered on the floor, the sound sharp and jarring in the otherwise celebratory atmosphere. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to him, but he didn't seem to notice the mess. His gaze was locked on me. Lila leaned over, whispering something to him. But whatever she said, he barely reacted. His focus remained unshaken. Later, during dinner, I tried to keep my head down and blend into the background. But I felt his presence before I saw him. Nathan was suddenly there, standing by my table, his imposing figure towering over me. "Sophia," he said, his voice low, filled with emotion. "It really is you." I looked up at him, my heart pounding, unsure whether to feel anger or relief. "It's me," I replied coolly, keeping my tone neutral. "And I see you've moved up in the world. Nick, or should I call you Nathan now?" He flinched at my words, but didn't retreat. Instead, he pulled out the chair across from me and sat down, his gaze fixed on mine. "I didn't expect to see you here," he admitted. "When I saw your name on the guest list, I thought it had to be a mistake." I couldn't hold back the bitterness in my voice.
"Why?
"Did you think I'd disappeared forever, just like you?" He winced, running a hand through his hair. "Sophia, you don't understand.
I didn't leave you by choice."
I narrowed my eyes. "Oh, really? Because it sure felt like a choice when you vanished without a word. I searched for you, Nick. I called, I emailed, I even went to places I thought you might be. But you were gone, like you never existed." Nathan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I didn't know what happened until recently. My father, he made sure we wouldn't be together." The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. He hesitated, his jaw tightening. It's a long story, but the short version is that my father saw you as a threat. Back then, I was just a young programmer with big dreams, and he had control over everything. He found out about your activism, about the protests you were organizing. He decided you were bad for the company's image. I stared at him, my heart pounding.
So what?
He told you to leave me, and you just did it. Nathan shook his head vehemently.
No. He didn't tell me anything.
He went to your mother. The air seemed to leave the room. My mother? I asked, barely able to get the words out. Nathan's face was pained. He paid your mother to make sure you stayed out of my life. It felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. My own mother? The woman who had always criticized me, belittled my choices, and compared me to Lila. Had she really taken money to break my heart? I searched Nathan's face for signs that this was some cruel joke, but all I saw was sincerity and regret. You're lying, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I wish I were, Nathan replied, his voice heavy with emotion. I only found out recently. After my father passed away, I came across old records, emails, transactions. That's when I saw her name. I shook my head, trying to process his words. It didn't make sense. Why would she do that? Nathan hesitated, his expression conflicted. Because your mother thought I wasn't good enough for you. She told my father you deserved someone better, someone with more stability. He paid her to make sure you stayed away, and she agreed. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away. A storm of emotions churned inside me. Betrayal, anger, sadness. My mother, the person who was supposed to protect me, had sold me out. I left Nathan behind, storming through the reception hall with one thing on my mind: answers. My mother, the one person who was supposed to love and protect me unconditionally, had betrayed me in the cruelest way imaginable. The lavish surroundings blurred around me as rage and heartbreak consumed my thoughts. I found her near the bar, laughing with a group of elegantly dressed women. Her carefree demeanor sent a surge of anger through me. How could she stand there, so composed, when I was unraveling? Mom, I called, my voice sharp and firm. Her laughter died, and the women around her turned to look at me. Their eyes flitted over my handmade dress, their judgment palpable. But I didn't care. My mother's smile faltered as her eyes met mine. Sophia, she said, her tone forced, as if trying to keep up appearances. What are you doing? You're causing a scene. I felt something snap inside me. Oh, I'm causing a scene? I shot back, my voice rising. Is that what you said when you took money to make sure I disappeared from Nick's life? The color drained from her face. Her friends exchanged awkward glances, sensing the tension and slowly retreating. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Let's talk somewhere private, she hissed through clenched teeth, dragging me toward a quiet corner of the room. When we were alone, I yanked my arm free, my chest heaving with anger. Tell me the truth, Mom. Did you take money from Victor Wells to get rid of me? She sighed, smoothing the fabric of her dress as though the act could shield her from the storm she had unleashed. Sophia, you don't understand.
Don't.
I cut her off, my voice trembling with rage. Don't tell me, I don't understand. Just answer the question. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape. But there wasn't one. Fine, she said at last, her voice sharp and defensive. Yes, I took the money. But it was for your own good. The words hit me like a slap. Good for my own good. My voice cracked as disbelief and fury collided. How is destroying my relationship for my own good? She crossed her arms, her expression hardening. Nathan, wasn't someone you could build a future with. He came from a world you didn't belong to, Sophia. His father made it clear that if you stayed in his life, it would ruin both of you. I did what I had to do to protect you. I stared at her, feeling like the ground was slipping away beneath me. Protect me?
You didn't protect me.
You sold me out. You sent me away and let me believe he abandoned me. Her face twisted into a defensive scowl. I gave you a better chance at life, she snapped. You went to a better school, got your degree, and now you have a respectable job. And Lila, her voice softened, and she looked away. Lila was destined for this kind of life. The money helped her get where she needed to be. Her words hit me like a dagger to the chest. So it was all about Lila, I said bitterly. You made sure she got everything while I was shoved aside. Her silence spoke louder than any words. My chest tightened, not just with anger, but with a deep, aching sadness. I had trusted her. I had believed she always had my best interests at heart. And now, the truth lay bare between us, raw and ugly. I trusted you, I said quietly, my voice breaking. You were supposed to look out for me, not sell me off to the highest bidder. I turned and walked away before she could respond. I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. My hands trembled as I made my way back to the reception hall, my mind racing. Everything felt surreal, like I was trapped in someone else's life. But one thing was clear, I couldn't stay quiet. The truth needed to come out. As I stepped back into the glittering reception hall, the music and laughter felt like a cruel mockery of the turmoil inside me. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on Nathan. He was watching me, his expression filled with worry and something else. Hope, perhaps? My mother's betrayal wasn't just a personal wound. It was a web of lies that had hurt not only me but Nathan as well. And Lila? She had benefited from it all, basking in the spotlight while I was pushed into the shadows. I felt a surge of determination. My mother's lies had controlled my life for too long. It was time to take that control back. Taking a deep breath, I stepped toward the head table, where Lila sat in her gleaming wedding gown, radiant and oblivious. Nathan's eyes widened as he realized where I was headed. Lila glanced up, her smile faltering as she noticed the intensity in my expression. Sophia, she said, her voice laced with irritation. What are you doing? I stopped in front of her, my voice steady, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. I need to say something, Lila. Something everyone here deserves to know. The room began to quiet as heads turned toward us. Nathan stood, his brows furrowed in concern. Sophia, are you sure? I'm sure, I interrupted, my gaze never leaving Lila's. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her perfect composure cracking. What are you talking about? I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. I'm talking about the lies that built this wedding, this life you're so proud of. I'm talking about how our mother betrayed me to make sure you had everything while I had nothing. Gasps rippled through the crowd, but I didn't stop. She took money from Victor Wells to send me away, to destroy my relationship with Nathan. She told me he abandoned me, but it was all a lie. Lila's face turned pale, and for once, she was speechless. And you, I said, my voice breaking as I turned to Nathan, you believed those lies. You let them keep us apart. Nathan stepped forward, his eyes filled with regret. Sophia, I held up a hand, stopping him.
No, not now.
The room was silent, the weight of the truth settling over everyone like a storm cloud. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of freedom. The truth was out. Now it was time to see who would stand by me and who would fall away. The moment Sophia steps into the reception, the contrast between the festive mood and her quiet fury is stark. The guests, laughing and chatting moments before, fall silent as they witness the tense exchange. Sophia's heart races with a mixture of fear and adrenaline, but the moment she opens her mouth to speak, there's no turning back. Your wedding was already ruined the moment you built it on lies, she says, and her voice rings out clear, like an announcement that echoes across the room. The tension is thick as everyone listens in shock. Her eyes lock with Lila's, and the raw pain she's felt for so many years cuts through her words. I know the truth, she declares, each syllable carrying the weight of years of suffering. She turns to her mother, who's standing nearby, trying desperately to look invisible. You took money to erase me from his life. When the room gasps, Sophia doesn't flinch. She pushes forward, turning to face Lila. Did you know? Did you know that she sold me out so you could have your perfect life? Lila's face pales, her hands shaking slightly as the truth settles in, but no words come. She opens her mouth, but only a strangled breath escapes. Her perfect day, her perfect life, is falling apart at the seams, and Sophia feels a strange satisfaction in seeing it unravel. Nathan steps forward, his voice calm but unwavering. "She didn't know," he states firmly. But now, everyone knows the truth. With the weight of the truth crashing down on them, Lila's composed demeanor shatters, and she screams. Her bouquet flies in their direction, landing with a crash that sends glass tumbling. The symbolic perfection of her wedding is now littered across the floor. The room is buzzing with voices, gasps, and disbelief, but Sophia doesn't feel the weight of their stares. Her body is tense, her heart racing, but for the first time in so long, she feels alive. Nathan's words have ripped away the facade, and nothing can ever be the same again. She feels exhausted, like the fight has drained her, but she also feels lighter, like a heavy weight has been lifted. Lila, once the radiant bride, is now just a shadow of herself. Her perfect dress and smile are nothing but a memory. As she watches Sophia and Nathan, her eyes wild with anger, her heart broken, she can't believe this is happening. Everything she had, everything she thought she built, is slipping away like sand through her fingers. Nathan's decision is made with clarity and finality. "I won't go through with this wedding," he declares, his voice unwavering. His father's ambitions, Lila's shallow dreams, none of it matters now. He's done with living a life controlled by others. This is over. The cool night air on the terrace feels like a bomb against the chaos inside. Sophia and Nathan stand together in silence, neither knowing exactly how to begin, but both feeling the weight of the moment. Finally, Nathan breaks the silence. His voice is soft but filled with regret. "I'm sorry," he says, the words heavy with meaning. "I should have fought harder. I should have found you sooner. I let my father's lies control me." Sophia looks at him, her eyes full of pain. "Why didn't you come back?" she asks, her voice trembling with emotion. The years of hurt, of believing she had been abandoned, spill out in those few words. Nathan rubs his face, exhaustion and guilt etched on every feature. "I thought you didn't want me anymore. My father showed me fake messages, things that made me think you had moved on. I believed him because I thought I wasn't good enough for you." Sophia's heart aches at his words. She can feel the pain he carries, the same pain she's been carrying all these years. But as they stand there, talking, a sense of hope begins to stir in her. Nathan steps closer, his voice steady. "I want to make things right. I want us to build something real, not just for us, but for the people who've been hurt by the greed and manipulation my father stood for. I've taken control of the company, Sophia. As of last week, I'm the majority shareholder." Sophia's eyes widen in shock. "You mean," she starts, but she doesn't need to finish. Nathan nods, his expression filled with determination. "I plan to take it in a completely different direction." Nathan steps back into the reception hall, his hand gently guiding Sophia back inside. The chaos has died down, but the tension in the air is palpable. Nathan takes the microphone, and the crowd falls silent once again. "Tonight has taken an unexpected turn," he begins, "but it's also the beginning of something new." Sophia listens, her heart swelling with emotion, as Nathan announces the launch of the Turner Wells Foundation. "This is just the beginning," he says, looking straight at Sophia. "And I couldn't think of anyone better to lead it than Sophia Turner." Tears fill Sophia's eyes as the audience applauds. She never imagined that the pain of the past could turn into something so powerful, so meaningful. As the weeks pass, the foundation begins to fund programs, and the lives of so many people change for the better. Sophia's mother fades into the past, and Lila, now married to someone else, fades from their lives as well. For Nathan and Sophia, the future looks bright, but it will take time to rebuild. They take it slow, learning to trust each other once again. Finally, on a quiet evening, Nathan slips a simple gold band onto her finger. It's not the end of their journey, but it's a new beginning. A beginning filled with hope, redemption, and love. And Sophia knows, at last, that she's home.